and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. My name is Scott Daly, and joining me, as always, the self-proclaimed king of the planet of the apes, it's Mr. Matt Caesar Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
It's going great. We're preparing to have a violent ape revolution. It's just awful and kind of campy, little campy.
This week on the show, we are continuing our Deconstructing Apes series with the fourth film in the Planet of the Apes franchise, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. Not 4, Matt, because I wrote it down wrong like 6 times that it was Conquest for the Planet of the Apes. It's of.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sure.
Well,
I don't know why I decided 4 made sense, but...
Well, I mean, it's funny because if it's Conquest of the Planet of the Apes would imply that it was already the Planet of the Apes before it was conquested, which is not the case. So I see why you were confused. But
inevitably, would it not always, in past, present, and future, be the Planet of the Apes?
That's totally fair.
This is all we're going to talk about this week. There's not too much going on in the world of movies and TV, at least not that we've been able to see. So we're just going to set our sights on this fourth movie in the series and talk about it for a little bit and then call it a day.
Sounds good.
All right, Matt, let's get into it. Let's talk about Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. Matt, what is this movie all about?
In a futuristic world that has embraced ape slavery, Caesar, the son of the late simians Cornelius and Zira, surfaces after almost 20 years of hiding out from the authorities and prepares for a slave revolt against humanity.
This movie was just like the other ones, written by Paul Den. It is directed by J. Lee Thompson, who also directed the film Cape Fear, Matt. Just a little factoid for you there. It stars Roddy McDowall, not as Cornelius this time, but as Caesar. See, so you can see the resemblance, because it's the same guy.
You can see the resemblance for sure.
It also stars Don Murray and a name that I don't think we said last week, Ricardo Montalban, playing the zookeeper.
Yeah.
In this a short role in both movies, playing Armando the zookeeper, or the circus. The circus.
The circus. Yeah. Last week I definitely noticed, but he's such a small part that I just forgot about it in the mix of everything else that was going on. But yeah, he's much more central this movie.
At least until he jumps out of a window.
I thought he was great, actually. I've always enjoyed Ricardo Montalban.
I agree. But what did you think about this movie, Matt? Apes number 4. What did you think? This is, by the way, the first movie came out in 1968. Let's just reinforce this. This movie came out in 1972. So it's been 5 years, and this is our 4th movie.
To be honest, this is the worst of them so far, in my opinion. I think we're still going to have fun talking about it, and probably not just mercilessly make fun of it the entire time, although there's going to be some of that, to be sure. But it's a short movie, and still, like, the last half of it is basically the ape rebellion, which is just a bunch of people in costumes running around and flailing and really unconvincingly, hitting people with sticks and stuff. And it's just kind of the same thing over and over, and it's boring. So like, it's just a very short, that very little happens in this movie,
Yeah.
And also, just to get it out of the way, I guess we continue to like violate the canon with each successive movie in increasingly egregious ways, where in the previous movie, it seemed like it was like 1970 at the latest. And this is 20 years after 1970. And it's, we're already having the ape revolution. We've already we went straight from normal world to everyone has had ape slaves for seemingly a very long time, and the whole society is based on ape slavery.
Yeah, and the entire society. Yeah,
it just in the time it took Caesar to grow up, and the ape slaves. Guards and the massive infrastructure of ape slavery. Everyone wears Nazi SS uniforms.
Yeah.
It's all of that stuff. While it is very silly and you're rolling your eyes at it, I think this is one of those movies where I just at a certain point decided that it's just whatever. This is a magical realism concept anyway. This is Planet of the Apes. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I think you need to just pretend that that it's been longer than 20 years. I mean, that's kind
Yeah.
of been the thing throughout every single one of these movies so far, is that things never kind of quite line up the exact way they should.
Hmm.
So you just have to kind of pretend it's been longer than 20 years, because I agree, when Cornelius is talking in the last movie about the future that he suddenly magically knows, despite the first movie specifically saying no one knew any of that stuff.
Hmm.
I really did think we're talking across hundreds of years. Cats and dogs die because of a virus from space.
From
Just
space. Just- what?
don't worry about it. So
Uh,
cats and dogs die, so we decide, we miss pets. We like pets, so we decide that we're all going to have monkeys as pets. And then over the course of decades, like, we slowly realize that, hey, these pets are very, very smart, and they slowly migrate from being just pets and companions into slaves. Like, that is what you kind of feel is going to happen. And then this movie comes in and says, no, 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 that happened in 2 decades. Very, very quickly, the entire world is transformed. There's no other reason for a police state, right? It's not like there's, besides the space virus, it's not like there's some sort of like international conflict we learn about that has caused America to dive into fascism, right? Like,
right.
there's nothing in the movie that talks about that. And it's just, we wanted to tell this like very, very charged racism story, which, we talked last week, but this week even more so. This movie, the politics of this movie are the most explicitly dealing with race and slavery and racism. Like, the metaphor here is, out of any of the films so far, the most explicitly realized, um, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's kind of the reason why a lot of the timing and timeline of the stuff isn't lining up, because I think we worked backwards from the, there were a lot of race riots going on in Los Angeles in the 60s, and it feels like we worked backwards from that concept. Like, we want to comment on the plight of minorities in this country, and we're going to do it through this movie, and we'll work back to that. um
Yeah. Yeah, it's just so on the nose, right? Like,
yeah.
I think there was something timeless in sort of, you know, a general statement about humanity starting from the first movie, and then as we've gone forward from the first movie, it becomes less general
Yeah.
and more just like, and also the other problem in tandem with what you just said is that the characters will just give these speeches seemingly to the camera, right? Like
Yeah.
this one is the worst, where there are moments where various characters just have a long, long speech in a place where it doesn't really feel like a conversation or like anything a human would do here. It's just like, yep, this is an opportunity for us to say the thesis statement of the story, and
Yeah.
makes it hard for you to, like, even though you know me, I appreciate weird sci-fi. The thing is, all the Apes movies get like a real handicap with me because they dare to be weird sci-fi,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like you kind of offset a lot of that if you just say the themes instead of letting it kind of be told visually and so forth.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also, you talked about how this is a very short movie, just, and that despite that, the end feels very long. And I completely agree with you. I think the thing that this movie was missing is, like, time for Caesar to kind of slowly interact with the apes and, like, teach them and build up. Like, it happens so fast that Ricardo Montalban dies, and he basically decides, fuck this, and just immediately, like, starts recruiting apes to this cause, like, right away, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it feels like there should have been more ape characters outside of Lisa, who is, like, actually barely a character in this, and she inexplicably learns how to talk by the end of the movie. It's only been 20 years, so,
Uh-huh.
like, she's supposed to just be a chimpanzee,
Uh-huh.
just like a regular chimpanzee that was probably born a generation before the chimpanzees that exist in our world.
Right.
And she's talking now. It
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
She's inspired. Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing about the timeline is that we just assumed that there was some time for the apes to evolve, and
Yeah.
this whole franchise, I almost admire the degree to which it does not give a single crap about science, because it's like they make they're just the guy heard about relativity once, and so he just takes that and then just makes up how, like, decides how he wants that to work for the sake of his
Hmm.
story, with absolutely no compunction about just mangling it. And then it's like, evolution, sure, evolution, the smart ape comes and he inspires all the other apes to evolve. That's
Hmm.
how evolution works.
Yeah, we have a throwaway line that the apes' IQ has gone up by 3 points since the last report, Matt. So
Mm,
they're all collectively getting smarter, which like would happen, right?
mhm. Yeah,
But
sure.
just over the course of hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of years. It would
Yeah.
not happen in 2 decades.
If I'm going to steel man it, if I'm going to give the, like, okay, it's more fun this way, right? It's more fun to
Sure.
give things the benefit of the doubt. Like, one thing we could be saying is, like, it turns out chimps are actually super smart. The only reason they haven't demonstrated it is they've never really had the opportunity to. But if you
Hmm.
put them in an environment where they're inundated with complex tasks to do, and trained to do things, turns out they're
Trained.
actually ways. Yeah, yeah, right. But like, the conceit, I suppose, would be, wow, chimps are actually way smarter than we thought. And the IQ increasing is actually more like, oh, now that they're exposed to our technological world, their effective intelligence is increasing. I know none of this is in the movie, but this is how I would do it if I was going to do
Yeah.
this.
No, no, you don't understand how they're trained though, Matt. See what
Yeah.
you do. Here's how you train a chimp. I don't know if you knew this.
Okay.
Um,
Go on.
you like set it down in
Uh-huh.
front of a pitcher and a
Yeah.
glass of water, and then you pour the glass of water into the pitcher or pitcher into the glass of water, and then you look at the monkey and you say, "Do."
Uh-huh.
And then it does it because
Yeah.
monkey see, monkey do. See, that's the joke. That's the joke, Matt.
I get it.
It's that's what,
It's
and that works.
it's the joke, except it's also like half of the movie. So one thing I kept thinking while watching this is, like, okay, so this is the movie where somebody watched this movie and got really mad and then wrote Rise of the Planet of the Apes in order to say, this is what this should have been. This is how you
Hmm.
should have done this story. Because there are so many beats in this specific movie, not the other movies, just this movie, that are, Caesar. It's literally Caesar.
Yeah.
Um, uh, uh, I'm not going to go through the whole thing because we're gonna watch that movie eventually anyway. But it, clearly, this is the movie that is supposed to pair with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the first movie in the new franchise.
Yeah.
And that it feels like there are moments in that movie that were written in response to being annoyed with how clunky things were in this movie.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't want to go through that movie beat by beat, but you just think about it, and every complaint I have about this movie is answered in that movie. Like we already talked about the fact that there should be more ape characters. We should
Right.
get to know these other ape characters and care about them, and maybe even have an antagonist ape. And look, we have that in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Exactly.
Yep.
You know. I think you're totally right that everything that we see Caesar in that movie go through is kind of, there's a bastardized version of that happening in this movie and happening much quicker and unnatural. Like one thing that really got to me, and honestly, the thing that I really do enjoy about this film is the character of Caesar.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that really got to me in the feeling that the movie is so fast and goes through things so fast is we meet Caesar in this movie. We know he's Milo from the last movie
Mm-hmm.
because he's with Armando still and because he's talking. But when we see him in this movie, at the very beginning of this movie, he's like, yes, he's in his 20s now because it's been 20 years, but he still acts like a child.
Mm-hmm.
He's acting terrified, he's acting afraid, he's acting completely overwhelmed. And I guess the point of the movie is we're supposed to watch this guy go from being this kind of naive, innocent child into this hardened, angry leader, the king, Caesar. Um, and I just didn't buy it. Like, I think that transformation is cool, and I love just like the thesis of you created the thing that will eventually destroy you by just being absolute assholes. You created this thing, but I just think it happened so fast, and it was just like, Armando dies, and that's it, and that's it, and we have the new Caesar, who's just we kind of we kind of are at a distance from him from that point on. Like, we don't see him being vulnerable. We just see him angry, and yeah, the events of the movie don't even play out in any kind of dramatic way. It's just like, this is just stuff happening now. It just kicks off really, really quickly. I'm not even
Yeah.
quite clear what his relationship with Lisa was. I mean, obviously he cared about her, but like, it's all kind of messy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I just keep thinking of the analogous moments in the later movie that kind of fix all of this, where
Yeah.
because it's the same. You start out with a very naive Caesar who is much more just of he's just a chimp.
Hmm.
He's a lovable dumb chimp, and then he has to go to the horrible chimp sanctuary that he hates, and it really hardens him and makes him angry and resentful. And then he grows, and we watch him grow into this leader who really understands what needs to be done, and like it all feels very organic, and it's done
Yeah.
through his relationships with the other apes. None of that is in this movie, and it's just feels abrupt. And also, yeah, I guess one thing that surprised me about the movie, that I just didn't know this about the movie because I hadn't seen the movie, is that like by the end of it, he's just like a despot almost. Like he's angry, he's shouting and raving, and like he's basically just like an ape supremacist. He sounds more like Dr. Zaius really than like his father,
Yeah.
and or even like that gorilla. Forget his name, but like it's I think what I was expecting, the reason it was a surprise, is I was kind of expecting him to turn out to be um the lawgiver ape religious figure,
Hmm.
and and I think maybe that was just a mistaken supposition, or maybe
I'm pretty sure the lawgiver is an orangutan. That's all I'll say about that.
okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think I don't know why I assumed this. Anyway, I think I just assumed it, and was wrong, and so I was surprised at how violent he was, especially since that just wasn't what happened in the other movie too, in
Yeah.
Rise or Dawn, whichever one. um he was still he didn't like Caesar in that movie didn't turn into a raving maniac. He just was like, yeah, we're gonna escape because you were treating us like shit.
Yeah.
But he didn't hate humans at the end of that movie. um
So, yeah, and this infuriates me about this movie, by the way, because I think you're absolutely right that the Caesar we see at the end of this movie walks right up to that line, and it really, really looks like he's about to cross it. But then suddenly, out of nowhere, inconsistent with the character we've seen up until now, he just says, "But now we will put away our hatred." And I'm
uh-huh
just like, wait, wait, what? And actually, I looked into this, Matt. And the reason why that feels so out of place is because they changed the fucking ending because they
uh-huh
were worried about having too negative of an ending. So they have Caesar walk right up to that line, and obviously he's about to order all the apes to murder this guy like brutally. And then it's like, no, no, no. Now we have to step back. Now we have to put down our weapons. Like, I I just
yeah
I forget what he says. It's like, we who are not human can afford to be humane. And I'm just like, no, you like when someone called you out on this before, you're like, but I'm not a human. Fuck you. Like
uh-huh
I felt like a cop out to me. It felt like we walked up to that line, and I would have been very impressed with the movie. I think one core thing about these films is that they all kind of end in this thing where you're like, oh, fuck.
yeah
Um, I don't know how to feel about that. And I feel like that's what this movie wanted to be. It wanted to be a movie where we see clearly despot dictator Caesar standing atop a pile of corpses, declaring this the planet of the apes. And essentially we do that, but we have to flip but it's okay, because look, he's gonna be good, actually.
yeah
I hate the end of that speech, that long speech. I hate the end of it.
It's terrible. It's really awful. Genuinely very bad. That this First of all, it's way too long and boring, and exactly the kind of thing I was complaining about when I was saying that the movie just talks at you and
Hmm.
explains what it's doing. Um, couldn't agree more that that ending, like, not that the movie was great anyway, but it kind of ruins the movie because you're just like, this doesn't feel dramatically earned at all. The idea that he
Yeah.
would suddenly have this heel turn, it's like I don't feel anything about this. I'm just confused. I don't like ideally, if you were going to do this sort of thing and have the character, decide, realize he had gone too far and feel some kind of remorse, and then back down from exterminating the humans, you could do that. Like, you could set
Yeah.
that up, but you have to actually bother to do it. Like, the only gesture in this direction was that he has the one ape who's his his wife, who seems to be a little worried at a couple of points in the story, and then sort of seems to like urge restraint.
Yeah,
Mm,
she like her saying no in a
yeah.
twist, perhaps I think you could call it. When Cornelius said the first ape rises up and says no, right?
Hmm.
Like, you think that's an ape saying no against his oppressor, but the first ape to talk that's not an ape from the future is her saying no to Caesar, that you've gone too far and stopped this. And perhaps if we had even an inkling of like their relationship outside of they force him into a forced breeding room with her, and she
Uh-huh.
like gives him the fuck me eyes, which is such a weird scene.
I love
That's
that
such a
scene.
weird scene.
That's the one scene missing from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, is the scene where they put Caesar in a room and she gives him the eyes, and then we see him kind of think about it and then go, oh well, oh,
All
okay.
right. But that's like really all we have with them, and so like I just felt like I appreciate what they were trying to do there. I didn't think it worked. I think, we haven't talked about the McDonald character yet, who is the only black man in the film that is kind of explicitly about race. And he's there to make our metaphor even more clear. If you, the audience, didn't quite understand what we were going for here, well, here's a black man saying, "I am a descendant of slaves."
Uh-huh.
Just to make that crystal clear for you. But I think maybe that character could have been the tool to kind of help define Caesar's doubt about where he's going, right? Like, if we see part of their retribution is hurting McDonald, like about to
Right.
hurt him or kill him, then maybe it's like, oh yeah, like this is a man who is a descendant of people who cast their chains off and took power back. And look what we're doing now. We've gone too far. This is too far. But
Yeah.
we don't do that. Like,
Right.
he's actually the one arguing against Caesar, and Caesar just like, no, fuck you. So yeah, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. I think this would have worked way better, actually, if like he had been about to kill, some human, and McDonald steps between them and like takes the bullet or whatever,
Hmm.
and Caesar, he dies in Caesar's arms, and Caesar realizes like, oh shit, this was the guy who risked his life to help me escape, and now he's died because of my actions, and then that could be a motivation for him to have some restraint and
Yeah.
temperance. But yeah, like, the way that character is used makes very little sense, and in a weird way kind of undercuts what we're trying to do with that character if you take it in context of the whole film series, because it's like, okay, so you doomed humanity is what you did. Like, you,
Uh-huh.
out of compassion, you kind of knew that this would happen because they know in the future that the apes wipe out the humans. So you caused that.
Yeah, yeah, but I
uh,
mean, I don't think he's thinking about that. I think he's just like, and this is like, I'm not a black man, so I'll leave that up to to our black listeners to say how this makes them feel. But it does feel a little bit icky to me that we're just like, oh, here, let's put a black guy in. He'll understand the plight of them. Like that felt a little too like pat to me. I don't know.
yeah,
It just felt like,
yeah,
yeah, well, he'll be black, and then the audience will know. It's like, yeah, yeah, this guy. Um, I didn't like that very much. And then so like I like the idea of having humans like sympathetic to the plight of the apes, because what they're doing to these animals is like objectively terrible. That's one thing the movie does not hold back on at all. Like, the reason this movie is burned into my head when I first saw it is because it is like incredibly dark and cruel. Like Caesar getting electrocuted is is a rough watch. Even though the mask is not doing great, and they all the apes generally look kind of silly. Like seeing him, like he's screaming like a man, and that was tough to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. That was there's not like, the movie's not altogether awful, I guess I should
No,
say. I think
yeah,
I've done nothing but said bad things about it so far, which isn't actually how I intended to go into this, because that was that was actually good and effective. There's a
hmm
lot of moments where, like, simple moments where we're kind of watching, um especially the early part of the movie, we're just getting these little vignettes of society where you
yeah,
have these humorless, tight-lipped humans treating the apes like crap, and the apes are um doing like it's well done, in that the ape characters are behaving like confused and scared, and um totally browbeaten in a way that really engenders sympathy.
hmm
And like I think that part of the movie is successful. I wish, like, I actually liked the movie a lot up until, like, really until the ape rebellion starts. I was kind of into it. I was genuinely like, I liked the Ricardo Montalban's character and his performance. I liked
hmm
the portrayal of the society, even though it is campy. The idea that they're wearing these Nazi SS uniforms, and it's very of its age, but I just
yeah.
accepted that and I was down for it. And then it's just genuinely, I liked and enjoyed the movie and was into the movie up until the rebellion starts, and then I was just like bored and disappointed past that point.
Yeah, I liked the villain. I liked Breck as this governor that's like desperate to reign control, and also is has convinced himself correctly that this threat to humanity is still out there somewhere. I do think if they had this like device that you can shine on people to make them tell the truth, they probably should have just like done that first,
Right.
not like after torturing the guy for what seems like 2 days. I don't
Uh-huh.
know how actually long it was, but it seemed like they were torturing him for a long time. And they're just like, okay, you can go. Hold on. Let me just turn on this light that makes you tell the truth right away.
Yeah, sure. I agree. That was,
Um,
again, very very Star Trek, and just like, yeah,
yeah.
we'll throw this in there. Yeah.
But you're right. Like, putting aside that it doesn't make sense for this to be happening 2 decades after the last movie, like the world that they've created is a pretty interesting one. I do like it. It is not holding back. It is like there's no gray here at all. It's just like these people are awful. They're evil. And these poor apes are being tortured and abused,
Mhm.
basically. And yeah, the way the apes are played is they like, I don't think the masks work very well. I think this movie was very cheap, but like the way they hold themselves, the way they act makes them seem innocent and confused and childish, and like in a way that like you feel sad, you feel bad for
Yeah.
them. You do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think just in particular Caesar, there are a few moments where his, performance was genuinely great. Like, I really was affected when he he's found out that his, father figure has died, and he escapes, and finally, he makes it to the store window where there's the sign advertising the circus, and he just, touches it, and then he gives this cry of just grief and rage and desolation, and it's like, yeah, this is great. This is great
hmm
stuff. More
Yeah.
of this.
And it's a cry that starts out like the cry of an ape, and
Mhm.
then eventually he can't hold back anymore and just cries like a talking ape would be able to. Like
Yeah.
he just showing how he's losing his ability to keep the illusion going. Yeah, it's a really great moment. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
yeah, I wish more of the movie was like it.
Yeah, more of that. This is probably me being a weird goofball, and maybe looping in some of the stuff from Rise of the Planet of the Apes again, but just like during the ape uprising at the end, I just could not stop thinking about, like, what actual chimps doing going on an actual rampage would be like,
Yeah.
and how it would not look anything like this, and it would be, you would need fewer chimps to do more damage, and it
hmm
and it would be rated R. Um,
Well, especially gorillas, right? Like
Yeah,
half of them are gorillas too, and like yeah, gorillas. I mean, chimps are stronger than people.
yeah,
Already, like smaller chimps are stronger than people, and gorillas are fucking massive and incredibly strong. Yeah,
yeah. Right. I think. uh, In fact, this is one place where the latter the latter movies go they have to bend over backwards to make it PG-13 to actually
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
show rather to not show what chimps would be capable of. I know I'm being like weird here, but like it's a funny kind of wrinkle in this premise where it's like, what if we have this idea of apes take over from humankind, and it's like, okay, well, kind of an interesting part of that premise is that apes are actually naturally incredibly vicious,
Yeah.
like, so, but like we're not going to use that at all.
Well, I mean, I
um
think that was the great irony of the first movie, right? Is that yeah, like these animals can be very vicious and violent, but when we meet them in the first movie, they're essentially pacifists. Now
right,
that is kind of turned on its head by the second movie, and also like we see that the gorillas are the kind of the hunter ones, but we see them like they don't like humanity, they round up humanity, they try to push humanity out, but we don't there's no wars amongst apes that we see in that first movie, and we've kind of damaged that since then. But that's like this idea of, especially the chimpanzees as pacifists, is like this idea that this series propagates, is that like humanity sucks, we will destroy ourselves, but perhaps there's hope for life in these apes. And I think the third movie does a good job of this too. Like the argument between the president and the doctor is as you talked about last week, essentially the president saying, "Hey, maybe we deserve this."
uh-huh,
Right?
right.
Maybe they have a better shot at survival and existence than we do. Maybe they'll ultimately be better than us. And this movie both does and doesn't at the same time say, nah, it's just kind of more of the same actually.
Yeah, I think the only the, the the governor character, he's so overtly evil,
Yeah,
and kind of standing in for, like, this is what humanity has become, this is what our
yeah,
society has become, that he's almost sort of standing in for the idea of, like, well, if this is what this society is like, then these people do deserve to die. um
yeah. I think so, but like the cyclical nature of it is that just like when you have if we ignore the last minute addition to the ending, which by the way was done with voiceover, like they didn't. That's not
uh-huh.
like a scene that they filmed. They just had Roddy McDowell like record additional dialogue for that sequence.
Oh
Um,
wow, yeah. So
yeah,
it's funny you say that, because I swear I noticed during that part that his mouth was matching up less well even than it had been before.
yeah.
So
Well, there you go. That's why.
yeah.
But like without that part, it is ultimately like you know we are going to like I think he says a line in there that's like now the masters have become the servants, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute here. Yes, be free, like you have the right to be free. You are a living animal that understands these concepts and is smart enough that you deserve to not be a slave. But like hold on,
Yeah.
let's not just like just do a Uno reverse card on this whole thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so I'll, I don't know, man. Ultimately, I don't know. I do think in the line of this, there's a line Caesar says at the very end of this thing that like the day of writing in the sky when your cities lie buried under radioactive rubble, the day when he finally and self-destructively turns his weapons against his own kind, which is like the movie like desperately trying to stay in continuity with the first one, like this idea that mankind wipes itself out through nuclear war is essentially just not true anymore,
Right.
despite the
Well,
fact that we throw that one line in. So I just to be clear, the thing that Caesar is proposing here is that all around the world in days time, apes are going to turn on their masters, overthrow them, and take control of the world. And then either subsequent or in parallel to that happening, mankind is going to bomb each other. No, they're going to try to bomb you. if nuclear weapons are going to be launched, it's going to be against the apes that have just tried to take over the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very muddy. It's rushed there at the end. Again, I feel tempted to just be like, okay, I think what they were trying to say is that the apes are not the apes are sort of okay. This is not in the movie, but my attempt to repair the movie is that the apes are actually just going to go run off and hide in the redwoods.
Yeah,
like they did in the other movie. And
you're saying what I think happening in this movie is this other
is the other movie where they fixed everything, and then the humans are going to kill each other, except this time it's going to be with nuclear bombs, and then the apes are just going to come out of hiding.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was so confused, Scott. The speech, he says, where there is fire, there is smoke. And in that smoke, from this day forward, my people will crouch and conspire and plot and plan for the inevitable day of man's downfall. The day when he finally and self-destructive, it goes on like this.
Yeah.
I was like, is this like a Simpsons bit about the Planet of the Apes? Like this is it's so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah.
And it's after like some good movie having happened before that. I think you're totally right. I mean, I know you are, that like they took what maybe was a passable movie in some regards, and then they had to change the ending later, and they just ruined everything.
So to be clear, I'm pretty sure that the entire speech up until the point where he says, "But now we will put away our hatred," was the original, supposed the way it ends. So that's still bad. It's still bad writing, but it was part of the original. Yeah, I mean, like, look at. There were so many times during this speech that I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? By tomorrow, it will be too late. Why, a tiny mindless insect like the emperor moth can communicate with another over distances of 80 miles. An emperor ape might do slightly better. Slightly? It's like, wait, what are we talking about right now?
What are we
basically the actual like substance of what we're saying right now is that this idea will spread like wildfire because an animal as simple as a moth can communicate over distances of 80 miles. But then it's confused with like an emperor ape might do slightly better because they're using like the idea of like, oh, will you be better at life than us? Slightly? What if you have seen here today, apes on the 5 continents will be imitating tomorrow? Wait, why?
Yeah. Just to be clear, the reason why you and I feel compelled to reread this is because it doesn't make any sense the first time you hear it. You're like, I can't follow this. What is happening? Also, what kind of butterfly can communicate over 80 miles? What is it? Since when can butterflies communicate at all? What are they talking about?
I think an emperor moth could just fly for 80 miles. I think that's it.
Okay.
And I think it would take a lot longer than a day.
Okay.
I want to Google this because I'm really curious now.
I don't see anything about emperor moths being able to communicate over 80 miles when I Google it. So,
a male emperor moth can smell a female moth's scent as far as 8 kilometers away.
Okay. That's not okay. I guess everyone in the 1960s and 70s knew about emperor moths and their...
Look, man, he probably heard it somewhere and he couldn't Google it. So he's just like, yeah, I mean, sure.
I think that's what a lot of writing used to be. It's just people hearing facts and writing them down.
True. Also, like that thing you read before, where there is fire, there is smoke. What does that mean?
Exactly. Well, okay, what he's saying is
when you try to destroy us, you will create. I mean,
smoke.
Essentially what it's supposed to mean is like in trying to destroy us, you will create an opportunity for us to plot against you. Like,
yes,
you can't. If you strike us down, we become more powerful than you could possibly imagine.
Yes,
but like,
exactly. Yeah.
The metaphor doesn't work.
Like I think this is one of those moments where he was really in love with this turn of phrase where instead of saying where there's smoke, there's fire, he said where there's fire, there's smoke. And then he's like, and then under that smoke, we can hide. And then he like tried to work that in, and it doesn't make any sense. It makes sense when you think about it later and have a podcast about it and talk about it way too much. but in the
Uh-huh.
moment you're just like, this is, I'm am I hallucinating? What is happening? Bad ending. Bad ending. Bad latter half of the movie. Kind of ruins the whole movie, to be honest. Kind of okay first half. Kind of like the intro, actually. Kind of like the intro scenes where we're corralling these apes and they're dressed in these jumpers that look like prison jumpers, and
Yeah.
it's kind of
Can
an
we
in media res.
can we can we 2,000 years later,
Uh-huh.
the chimpanzees are wearing green, the orangutans are wearing
Yeah.
orange, and the gorillas are wearing red because of the jumpsuit that they were given when they were slaves.
Yep. There you go.
That's fucking hilarious.
Yeah. It's great. I love it. I love it.
It's just like it's the where Indiana Jones got his hat of the Planet of the Apes. It's like I didn't need to know the origin of the green
Right.
clothing. I didn't need it.
Except instead of that happening many years later, it happened like 3 or 4 years later. So so lucky.
Maybe it's like this is like it's because Cornelius and Zira were wearing green. So when they were like, what should we give the chimp apes?
Yeah.
Green.
There you go.
It's got to be it.
That's it. Speaking of Cornelius and Zira, that like I think the most surprising thing about the 4 movies we've watched so far is like they turn out to be the emotional spine of the series for me, and I got
Mhm.
so attached to them and invested in them over the course of those first 3 movies. And one of the only moments where I felt anything watching this movie was just when I would remember that this is the son of Cornelius and Zira, and like, oh, they're treating this poor lost baby of Cornelius and Zira so horribly, and like, oh, the poor child of Cornelius and Zira is sort of turning dark and behaving in ways that even they would condemn. Isn't this tragic? And I was
Mhm.
hearkening back to those characters, even though those characters aren't in this movie at all. They are mentioned in this movie, but they're not in the movie. That's surprising to me, and I don't know. I just think that's cool, I guess.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I feel like this movie missed those characters, and you could, I guess, say Roddy McDowall is just being Cornelius again, but he's clearly not, right? I think that is an interesting thing about the character he's playing in this movie is you think he would just be playing Cornelius again, but he's not.
No, it's
Um,
quite distinct. I mean, Cornelius
yeah,
as a character is really a pacifist. It's only in the very last minute of his life that he behaves violently. Whereas this guy, he's just broken by his experiences.
yeah, yeah. And I wish that was more sad than it was. In a better movie, that would be much more tragic and horrible. But
Yeah, yeah,
I don't think they landed it. I don't.
I agree.
And that anything else you wanted to say about Conquest for the Planet of the Apes?
Nope.
Like once again, just to reiterate, the visuals of this, I don't think this is incredibly directed. I think like lighting wise, there was moments where I was like, this movie's really dark and I can't really tell what's going on. But like I love the aesthetic. Like even if it doesn't make sense, they really committed to it and the look of it and like the feel of this world that they've created in this unnamed American police state city. I think really works. Like as you said, like the opening sequence, like the auction scene where like the apes put up for auction, like all that stuff really works really well.
Yeah, yeah, I liked it.
And then it just kind of loses it. So all right, we've got one more in the series, in the original series. You'll never guess how quickly this one came out after the last one.
Tell me.
73, 1 year
Okay.
later.
Wow.
It is called Battle for the Planet of the Apes. It is rated G.
Okay. Yeah.
So this movie was PG because they didn't have PG-13 at that point. But Battle for the Planet of the Apes is rated G, and it is the final movie in the series. We'll kind of see, perhaps if this final movie can kind of redeem the mistakes made to the both the timeline and to the just like the overall theming of these films. Maybe the last one can land it, and maybe we'll retroactively like Conquest better. I don't
Yeah.
know. We'll
Maybe
see.
so. Maybe so.
Yeah. It's another very short movie. It's 90 minutes long. And I believe its budget was similar to the last one, possibly even less. The budgets are like dropping precipitously. Um, I think it's the same. The budget for the last movie was supposedly 1.7 million. The budget for this film for Battle we'll be covering next week is 1.8. So about the same. About the
All
same.
right. All right. Well, they're seeing how far they can stretch it out, I guess.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if I've ever seen Battle. I think when I was watching the series with my family, we made it through Conquest, and I don't think we ever got to Battle. So I think this is going to be a new one for me. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. I guess one aspect of it that I'm most excited about is just like I have never really known like what is the story arc of the original Planet of the Apes movies, and I kind of thought that I did because, as we've discussed in previous episodes, I mistakenly thought that I watched more of these movies than I did when I was a kid. So now I'm realizing like, oh, I just have this ignorance that I now really want to rectify, and I'm kind of excited to. And I'll feel like I finished something that I started as a child, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does. It does. I'm looking forward to it. I think this is, despite the fact that I think we both agree this movie was the worst of the four. I'm still enjoying the series very much. And I mean, it is still like, just from a high level perspective, like this is a series that 5 years before this movie came out started with the spaceman landing on a planet and finding a settlement of apes that were enslaving humans. And now we're in police state 1990 Los Angeles, let's say, watching a group of slave apes overturn their oppressor. Like the places this series goes, I think, pretty remarkable actually. For
I love it. Yeah,
in a world where you would just think that they would want to just cash in and kind of keep making the same movie over and over again. The distinct and wonderful thing about Planet of the Apes is that they really never do that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They're all wildly creative, for better or worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So that is Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. That's all we had for you folks this week. If you have any opinions on this movie or on just the Apes franchise in general, please reach out to us. We want to know, how are you liking these movies? Are you watching along with us for the first time, or are you an old ape head? Let us know. You can find us at doofmedia@gmail.com, over on Twitter at doofmedia, or at our subreddit r/doofmedia.
Yeah, and if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on all of the major podcasting platforms.
And if you like what we do here and want to support us, please consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head over to patreon.com/doofmedia and pledge at any of the available levels there. You get a bunch of bonus podcasts. You get to help with voting in book clubs, which our book club is coming up next week. So there'll be a new poll on Patreon here pretty soon for the next month's book. It's just a great community and a great way to kind of be a part of our content here. So check it out, patreon.com/doofmedia.
That's right. Also, please consider giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you prefer. Each review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, folks, we will see you next week for Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.
Wait, so it's Conquest of, but then Battle for.
Yeah.
So confusing.
Of course. It's like, Fast 5 and the,
I still
Furious
think
7.
the Fast series wins the award for most confusing naming sequence ever.
They certainly do, because I think they actively try not to have a pattern. But
yeah.